Welcome to our Meet the Experts Showrunners panel. We are joined by Russell T. Davies from It's a Sin, Chuck Lorre from The Kaminsky Method, Dave Andron from Snowfall, Bill Lawrence from Ted Lasso, Little Marvin from Them, and Austin Winsberg from Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. Thank you all for being here. Well, TV has changed so much in the last 20 years, but I feel like especially in the last 5 years or so with streaming and binging and shorter seasons. Well, short seasons are the norm where Russell's from, but not historically in America where we have like up to 25 episodes a season. But what have you liked and disliked about these changes, and how have you all adapted as writers and showrunners? Bill, let's go to you.
I mean, Chuck and I were talking the other day because we've both been doing this for a long time. It's cool to have the actors and actresses talk, you know, because we started in silent television, which is the biggest thing for me, man, is Spin City was we did 100 episodes in the first 4 seasons of that show, and in the first 3 seasons of Ted Lasso, we will do I'm not great at math, 34 episodes. And so it almost feels like the same way we would plan out, you know, a normal season of television back then. As a writing staff, it was very fun for me to essentially plan out the beginning, middle, and end of the whole story, you know, rather than my network experience. Because I'm a dinosaur, used to be, you know, you move people and characters ahead slowly in their arcs. And when you hit the 8th year, if people don't hate you, you try to figure out how the show ends. And so to think of storytelling in terms of an overall arc and beginning, middle, and end has been really fun. It's why I respond to a lot of the shows that the people on this panel are doing, because you can tell they're all doing that way in a way that's not as episodic as maybe it used to be.
Chuck, what about you?
What's the question again?
Well, what do you like in this
You
one,
asked
all the changes?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You've been doing this for too long.
You damn right. You know, the greatest change of this past year was working during a plague, it's heavy lifting anyway. But working during the winter with masks and shields, and there were these people who would come up with these 6-foot-long sticks and hold them up to make sure you were 6 feet apart from the person you were talking to. And you just wanted to grab the stick and just stop. It was as hard as you couldn't go on the stage and talk to the actors without donning all this protective material and whatnot. It was a strange, surreal experience producing television during what, you know, was clearly a very dangerous time, and it added a sense of foreboding to the whole process. I'm amazed we got it done. I mean, I think looking back, you know, we shot this last season November, December, and part of January. It's a miracle to me that it got done. And no one was seriously ill. We had plenty of positive test results that would shut us down periodically, and negative, positive, but the fear was sort of an underlying dynamic to the whole process this year. I don't know if that's even remotely what you asked.
I think that Bill was a big change this past year. Dave, what about you?
You know, I think just big picture, what's been lovely about the addition of kind of the streamers, and look, there are downsides to all of it, but I think just the diversity of shows that are out there, right? The fact that you're not put into the box, as these guys were saying, if you have to do a 24 episode thing that fits into this little space. It's like, you want to do 6 episodes about, you know, the AIDS epidemic? Like, sure. Okay. It's not, you know, it's still, you still got to go out there and work and set it up, but there are more places, right? And I think there's more inclusion and more diversity in the shows. And I think that's a wonderful thing for show creators and writers.
Little Marvin, what about you?
Yeah, I have no frame of reference. This is my first show. Ask me in 20 years.
Well,
This
like,
is all-
as a TV fan, what do you like and dislike about?
Well, I am. Yeah, I'm a lifelong TV fan. Well, my own experience is that I grew up loving anthology formats. I was a kid. I'm aging myself, but I was a kid during the reboots of Twilight Zone. The first reboot of Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock Presents reboot. I'm not old enough to know the first one, and Amazing Stories. And these were the things I loved as a kid. I loved things that were sort of a closed loop, and that you kind of got in and got out, and it felt almost like reading a book, a great book, and chapters. And so it was never a question to me that the first thing I made would fall into that space, because it's just what I love. But again, I've only made 10 episodes of television, so ask me in a few years.
Austin, what about you?
Well, certainly the more buyers and the diversity of places that you can go and the kinds of things that they're looking for. The biggest thing for me is I'm doing a show for Apple right now, and we don't have the same time constraints of network TV. Zoe's, we have 8 days to shoot a giant musical every week, and we have to be done in 42.5 minutes. So not having to adhere to those strict timelines and time constraints certainly opens things up in certain ways for storytelling and ability to do a little bit more and not feel the pressure of having to get it in on a certain time and budget and scale.
And Russell, what about your perspective as someone who often does one-offs and 6-episode series?
I think it's. I still haven't got over Little Marvin and the pie. By the way, we're all agreed on that, aren't we? What the hell? What kind of pies are you eating?
Not pie, it's crazy.
Crazy. Take the show off him. It's. But I think now. I mean, I just think back to when in the 90s, when I was starting, late 80s, and when you think about young writers, when I was young, it was all formats, but basically you sit down and invent your detective or your doctor or your country doctor, or those simple, or your cop precinct, those simple. Everyone was planning, and now you've got I Hate Susie and I May Destroy You. That I can't even define. I can't quite tell you what dramas are. They're just writing from the soul. People, so I think you can say to young writers, just write from your soul, and then you get something like One. I mean, the joy about watching One Division was like, where were the network notes? Where are all the people saying, get this? What's going on? You can't do this. And that show was so liberating in so many ways. So I think it's a joyous time where you can kind of work hard and justify it, write anything. Great.
Well, on that end, what's the best and worst studio note you've ever gotten? Chuck?
I'm trying to remember. I'm going way back when I was writing children's animation, and on the Muppet Babies, the note came that Miss Piggy would not. First of all, lady tigers don't drive coaches, nor do they wear hats, and Miss Piggy would not say "yikes." And I knew my days were numbered in children's animation with notes like that. It was. I have to leave now. I really have to go. It was the feeling when you start seeing stuff like that. I've actually the actual answer to your question is, for the sake of my mental well-being, I can't remember. The network notes over the years. I've washed them out. It was maddening. The things that made network television almost crazy making. Television almost went backwards when I started. When you think about Norman Lear's time in the 70s and how much creative freedom there was in storytelling. I was talking about this the other day with somebody that he did an episode on Maude where she got an abortion in 1990, 91, when I was on Roseanne. The word was not allowed to be said. You couldn't actually speak the word on ABC. So the culture is a roller coaster, or it's certainly not a merry-go-round. It seems to change dramatically based on the network input changes very much on how they are reading the cultural landscape, or maybe their advertisers are reading the cultural landscape, and it gets maddening because we're under this childlike illusion that we have freedom of speech. and there's nothing more clear when you're working at network television that that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm geeking out that he wrote for Muppet Babies. I love that. One of my favorite theme songs. I love that show.
In all fairness, I got fired.
Oh,
You wouldn't say that. So.
I got kicked off of a couple of those shows. Yeah, I didn't have the voices, I guess.
harsh. Muppet Babies World was harsh. Who knew?
It was tough. It was even tougher on My Little Ponies, I got to tell you.
I'm delighted.
Little Marv, about you, your first show, what were the studio notes like?
I wish I had a horror story, and actually, I don't wish I had a horror story because that would not be fun. It was amazing. I had such an amazing relationship to our Amazon team, I have to say, and to our Sony team, and they were so. And I'm not just they didn't pay me to say this, but it's true. They were really the amount of autonomy and trust they showed was immense, and they believed in what we were making. And to be honest with you, the notes they gave only helped to shape and craft and make things stronger in a way. And so I don't have any great story about it other than it was really super positive, which is very important.
I would like to just add that I was speaking about network television. I didn't have any problems with Netflix. There was freedom there. It was unbelievable. Billy, you must have had the same experience with Apple, I would think.
Yeah, it was. My favorite bad note is also my favorite note of all time because it was said without irony. Back when I started in Spin City, you were allowed to say the word ass, I think 3 times in a network half hour. And we had submitted a script I still have this framed on my wall. We submitted the script that said ass 4 times, and Standards and Practices sent me a note. They didn't know they were making a joke, but they said you have the word ass on page 7, 13, 19, and 25, and that's 4 times. You can only do it 3, so please pick your ass. And I'm like, that's on my wall forever. Forever.
On Two and a Half Men, we would purposely put in a horrendous bestiality note joke, knowing we'd cut it to save the oral sex joke on page 19. We'd give up the insane who are you kidding joke, but we would absolutely place jokes in the script that were just unthinkable for network television, and then trade them for the ones we wanted.
Well, look, the good notes for me, I always like to take this opportunity because, by the way, by now, everybody on this thing, and Marvin had a great template there, has had relationships with communication with people that are on the executive side of entertainment. And what I think, and I like people having the pride of ownership if they work on a show. It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of people working harder for your show. And I always tell one story when I occasionally talk, which is, and it was a network note that I loved. And I think that the line, as I've been obsessing about this over the years, is writers' rooms, we obsess over every story and everything. And so we get crazy sometimes when people pitch, what if those characters almost kissed? Did you think of that? No. I mean, you came up with it on this phone call, and the 16 of us didn't come up with that over the last 3 months. Of course we talked about that, right? So on the other hand, this is the note. I was brought up to hate notes. Gary Goldberg was my mentor. He's from a different era, and he had a contentious relationship sometimes with the network. And there was one guy that was covering Scrubs. And, this is hopefully a good story. This is a note he gave. He called me up, some trepidation, and he said, hey, so I was looking at this episode, and the act break with these 2 characters, with one being really sick and the other one, I'm supposed to really care about that, I assume, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, I love your show, but I didn't give a shit. And then there was like silence, and I got really mad. And then I was like, you know what, we'll talk later. And I hung up, and it was an awesome note because he said, I love your show. I'm a huge fan. I wanted to care, and I didn't give a shit, and I don't know how to fix it, and I got to go. And I always tell that story because his name is Jeff Ingold, and he is the president of my company now. And you know, someone that I spend tons of time with. So to me, when you talk about notes, if you come at it from a place of, I think I understand what you're trying to do, and I love everything that's happening in this show when it works, but whatever reason this isn't working for me, and that's it. I got to go. Please don't be mad at me for being the messenger by. It was a great note. I mean, it made me want to hunt him down and kill him that day, but we ended up talking about it in the writer's room and fixing it with and by the way, and he took the time later to go, hey, that was really good. That was cool. And I'm like, oh, wow, you were, you know, annoyingly a part of it, but it was a good note.
It's quick and painless.
And I think all of us as creators would wish that that's the way that they were presented to you sometimes.
Dave, what about you?
Yeah, thankfully I had a lot of time to think about this because I wouldn't have off the top of my head, because there's the notes where it's like, you're clearly not paying attention. Those are always frustrating. I will say there was a pilot years ago where I had this big kind of action thing at the end. And the president of the network and green lighting this thing was like, look, I have one note on this whole thing. At the end, can there be a stealth boat? I was like, a stealth boat? And he's like, yeah, I want the whole thing to be like off the get onto a stealth boat because I think that'd be cool. And I was like, I'm just gonna say, like, you know, the word boat in a it's going to. He's like, I think it'll be awesome. Just do it. So I like reworked the whole thing around the stealth boat, and then of course I get the call from the network where they're like, "What are you high? Like, we're not. How are we supposed to do this with a stealth boat?" And I was like, "Well, I called it all right." And then you know, had to change everything because everybody knew there was no chance. And look, I think that I'm really lucky with Snowfall. You know, the studio FX is the studio and the network, right? I don't have to get one set from the studio, one set from the network, and they're contradicting each other. And I remember on the pilot getting a call from Landgraf, who had a thought, and he started the thing with like, "Look, this is your TV show, but for what it's worth, here's my thought." And when the president of your network, who's kind of so well respected across the industry, starts his notes call with, "This is your show, but this is my thought." I mean, it's really smart, right? You're immediately inclined to want to listen to him and take it. And it's not BS. Like, he genuinely means it, when he could have just called me up and been like, "You're a moron. You're going to do this other thing." That's pretty cool. And I think that's how they roll over there.
Mm-hmm. Russell, what about you?
I've got a great anecdote. It's funny though about Amazon was that I was giving them notes. I did a show with Amazon, and you do all the press interviews. Couldn't stop saying that they should pay their taxes. I just couldn't stop saying it. It's like, yeah, it's best to work for Amazon. They should pay their taxes. And they say, yeah, we're about to show. But really, they're destroying the world by not paying their taxes. And eventually, some poor little man from the Amazon TV department had to phone me up saying, "Please, will you stop saying you're destroying?"
Don't ever stop saying it, and don't ever stop calling them Amazon, because I love it.
Amazon. But the worst note, I haven't got any one-line note, but the worst notes are the ones that are just so vague. The one I always love is, "Will they come back next week?" Well, I don't know. I hope so. It's like, yeah, that's the fun. Really.
You have to keep watching.
People at the end. And ask about the ending, and I say, don't pretend you're not going to run a trail after it. Trail? It's like, but it's those notes where they go, and where you really have to work as a writer. It's like, this. Why am I telling you people this? But it's like, where they're going, just not quite landing. It's that vague. It's like, not there. It's not quite landing. Is it?
Hey, if it's not landing, you might want to raise the stakes a little. Sometimes that helps.
Put it on a boat.
Can't go wrong.
When you know they're right as well, and everyone's sitting there going, "Yeah," and you've just got to come back to this room and do your job and work hard and work out what that means. Normally means cutting someone.
Austin, do you have any horror stories at all?
Oh, sure. Well, I've developed everywhere. I've developed streaming network pilots everywhere. I have a million horror stories. So, but first of all, I will say there's not always a correlation between streamers. I'm glad that you guys have had really positive experiences. It's not always my experience on streamers that they give less notes than on the network side. But So it depends on where you are. I will say that my favorite one, the top one that came to my head for bad notes was I sold a show a few years ago on the network side that had dealt with the loss of a parent, and it was an emotional scene in the family. And the note I got from the network was, when you're describing the dad's death, you make the death sound funnier. So that was a hard one to figure out.
Okay.
And then, maybe one of the best ones I got. I mean, this wasn't from an executive, but this was just recently from Paul Feig, who was a producer on Zoe's. Originally, the lead was a male, and he said, "I think you should make the lead a woman." That was his one note after he heard the pitch, and that changed everything. So that was one where it's like it's a very simple note, and yet it fundamentally changed the entire structure of it and how all the characters behaved and were around each other. So I certainly agree that when it's kind of a more general kind of note, that it's sort of a macro note, those are kind of easier to handle than the endless micro notes.
Mm-hmm. I wish we could dive more into all of your hundreds and thousands of studio notes more, but I don't want to take up more of your time. But it was great speaking with all of you. My note to all of you is you were all amazing. And thank you so much for being here, and congratulations on all your projects. And have a great day. Thanks so much.